Hello PascoMath grade 8 teachers. Today we're going to explore 8.F.2.4. We're going to unpack it. We're going to look at what you could be doing in the classroom as well as what students should be doing, and then anticipate some misconceptions and how to address those in the classroom. So let's go ahead and get started. The standard reads, construct a function to model a linear relationship between two quantities. Determine the rate of change and initial value of a function from a description of a relationship or from two xy values, including reading those from a table or from a graph. Interpret the rate of change and initial value of a linear function in terms of the situation it models and in terms of its graph or the table values. There are a lot of things going on there, so let's unpack it. Students need to identify the rate of change, the slope, and the y-intercept, that initial value from tables, graphs, equations, and verbal descriptions of linear relationships. I want to emphasize the word "and" there, so we need to make sure that we have experiences of all of those for our students. The y-intercept is the y value when the x value is 0. We need to be explicit about that with students. And then the interpretation of slope and the initial value of a function is accomplished through real-world situations. So again, we're going to use context to drive that learning. So some things you can do as a teacher. First is present students with graphs of linear functions and focus that discussion on that y-intercept. Again, the graph should be tied to context, so like what does it mean when the graph crosses the y-axis there, that y-intercept. Have students identify the y-intercept from a table. So again, if they're just given a table of values, hopefully with context, what does it actually mean when x equals 0 and y equals whatever it does in that situation. Ask students to find the equations for the linear functions and see if they can figure out how to find the y-intercept when the function is in the form y equals mx plus b. We're going to connect back there. We did some learning about deriving the equation y equals mx plus b, so this should be a continuation, if not with that standard. Provide context as much as possible so students learn to interpret the meaning of the initial value of the function through the context. And then explain the slope of a line by presenting the graph of a linear equation, introducing the slope as that ratio of the change in y values to the change in x values of those same 2 points. This connects back to grade 6, grade 7 work, ratio and proportion, unit rate. You also can display tables for students to determine the rate of change using the rise to run ratio. Definitely when you are using that table to find the difference of the y and x coordinates, make sure that table is set up in a way that it's not just 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe -2, 0, 1, so don't make that interval not consistent. So they really have to do some interpretation there on both the x and the y. Provide context as much as possible so students can interpret the meaning of slope in a given situation, and provide students with verbal descriptions of situations where they can create the equation of the function, and they need to be able to identify that initial value and relate them to the y equals mx plus b, that general equation. So students should be discovering the y-intercept, that initial value of the function, from a table, graph, algebraic, and verbal description. They need to be able to do all. Calculate the slope of the line using the rise to run ratio. They should also be able to discover slope of a line when the function is presented in a table, graph, algebraic form, or verbal descriptions. And then also communicate the meaning of the slope in the y-intercept in given situations using that precise math vocabulary. Some things we can anticipate is when we move to the abstract, students might confuse the rise to run ratio for slope. That becomes most apparent when we move to the traditional formula for slope. Again, go back to that context. The more students focus on making sense within context, the less likely they'll be to make these errors. I've also seen some vocabulary foldables using the terms rise and run, and that can help them as well to have that visual representation. That's it for this standard. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or your regional specialist, and thank you for making PascoMath more awesome.